Please welcome Dee Rees. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much.
You are an amazing filmmaker. It's Mudbound, the film we just saw now, which is going to be coming out on Netflix. But a lot of people know your work from Pariah. Yeah. You created a story that really touched on how your life could have been. When you look at a film, are you trying to imbue a piece of yourself within it?
I think like part of it happens, deliberately, and then I think there's a stuff that slips in accidentally. So for me, like looking back, I realize that in my work, there's always this element of like home, about not being able to go back home. Like in Pariah, Alike, she ends up going to Berkeley to get away from home. And then in Bessie, like Queen Latifah, like when she goes back, is when she goes home to Chattanooga, that's when she gets stabbed and that's when she gets hurt. And in this film, like both these two kind of guys who've gone off to war, like coming back home is like the real battle line. So I think like that kind of fear of home is something that slips in, and I don't know, I should talk to a therapist or something, but like that's like the thing.
I guess in different ways they both have a valid fear of not coming home. Mudbound is a film about Americans who go off to a war. Mm-hmm. Two Americans who should be the same. One is black, one is white, and when they come back they experience a very different country even though they both fought for the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I think the thing that's interesting, so like Jamie and Ronzil, like these are these two soldiers from different families, and so they've kind of been outside the bubble, and their whole kind of thing is that they've gone over to fight in World War II. They come back home. There's no ticker tape parade for them. There's, these kind of muted celebrations. And, they have PTSD before there's really like a name for that. And so they're just like, self-medicating, they're drinking, and neither family really understands them. And they kind of connect with each other and kind of find this friendship because of that trauma. So like these guys ordinarily wouldn't talk to each other, but they're kind of like having this thing because they're the only guy that like understands like what they've gone through. Right. And so I think that's kind of interesting to like delve into how when people are cracked or when they're broken, that's when kind of like empathy can kind of creep in or seep in, yeah.
Is that something you're trying to create in the film, is an empathy? Because it feels like the story touches on so many different themes. On one end, I'm feeling for veterans who come back and aren't treated the way they should be by their governments. On the other hand, I feel for black Americans who fight for a country that don't treat them equally as they would every other American. And then on the other side, you're seeing how women are treated in American society. Was that intentional on your part?
Yeah, and so I have to shout out Hillary Jordan, like the author of the book. So like these multiple points of view was a conceit of the book, and then bringing it to life as a director, I really wanted to make sure that there's balance there and nuance, and I absolutely wanted to get to this idea of like everybody's fighting on their own fronts. Like the two women, so it's Florence and Laura, played by like Mary J. Blige and Carey Mulligan. They're living in a time where like the man is like the head of the household and they're supposed to obey, and both women are disobedient. They're quietly doing what they think is right. And like the two sons, they're fighting this idea of like mental trauma. And then you have these two farmers played by like Rob Morgan and Jason Clarke, Hap and Henry, and these guys both love the land, but they're both connected to it in really unequal ways, right? And so, but they both have this sense of being disinherited. They both feel like, they can take title, that they're entitled to this place, and one of them literally is, because he holds the deed, and the other one can't, even though he does the deeds that keeps the farm going.
Right.
And so everybody is kind of like, conflicted and fighting their own fronts, and I want you to like, you may not, agree with someone, but you can like certainly understand kind of their worldview. So
it's interesting how it feels like the women in the film have to do a lot more of that. That there is a deft touch that they all possess with regards to navigating the emotions of the men that they have to deal with. Mary J. Blige in the film is phenomenal. I mean, the cast is amazing. The film is beautiful. But Mary J. Blige, I've never seen her like this in a movie. Like, how did this come together? How did you get Mary J. Blige, and was it easy to get her to say, I'm going to do this with no lashes, no wig, this is not going to be me in makeup, this is just going to be as raw as possible?
So I had to talk her into that part of it, but but it was kind of great. So I had done Bessie before, and so I knew her manager, Shakim, and so he manages Queen Latifah and Mary, and so as we're putting the cast together, I'm like, do you think Mary would ever consider doing this? And it was like a Hail Mary. I was like, I doubt, like she'll say no, and we'll move on. And And so she read it and said yes. And so I was like, oh my God. And so then it was about, disappearing into the character. And just like, in a way, I think it's like freeing because, she could kind of like let go, of the exterior and be this very interior person. And she's gorgeous. She's beautiful, with very little makeup on. And so we talked about it. And she tried to sneak in like some eyelashes every now and then or try to like sneak in some like nails. And it's like, no. Like no gel tips for Florence. But
I like the idea that she had like contraband. There was nails and tips and.
Yes, it's like, what is that in the frame? Like, what is that? Is that a French manicure? But no. But Mary's amazing, and she was amazing to work with. And like the thing that I miss is like the surprise of it, because when we first like premiered at Sundance, nobody knew it was her until the end credits rolled, and everybody's like, "Wait, who was Mary in the film?" And now everybody knows, so they're like looking for her. But at first, it was like this great like magic trick where they didn't know until like the very end. So
you've been involved in some phenomenal storytelling. You've created films that many people have loved, and they've been critically acclaimed. When you look at the controversy that has followed the Golden Globes, Natalie Portman was presenting an award and said, "Here are the all-male nominees," and this sparked a conversation again. As a director who is in Hollywood, who is a woman. Do you think that there needs to be a conversation in and around the inclusivity of women as being seen as filmmakers? Do you think there's more that can be done, and how can it be done?
I think there should be a larger conversation about so many of these awards, like not being about the craft, like not being about the work itself. I feel like when, critics can't celebrate what's on screen, then they want to celebrate the maker. If they can't celebrate the maker, then they would celebrate like the story of. So to me, if you're just like a checklist and it was like cinematography, performances, editing, sound design, then it get really easy. And to me, regardless of maker, like what is excellence? Like, and I think that the bigger conversation is like people's, I think, unconscious bias influences what they see as excellent. So to me, like if you're like a famous filmmaker and you make a mediocre film, it should be ignored. If you're an unknown filmmaker, you're walking off the street, you make something excellent, it should be rewarded. So there's also this kind of inherent kind of like hierarchy built in where it's like, oh, famous name, big name, we have to, give it respect. And so for me, the bigger thing is like, if it was just about excellence, if it was just about craft, I think that would help to kind of transcend that, because then it'd be fine. All 5 nominees could be women because you're looking just at the craft. There's not this deference to like body of work, or there's not this deference to like brand, so. Yeah.
You apply that in your world as well, because on this film, you had many of your department heads women. And it wasn't just women, it was women who are excellent in their craft. Is it hard to find these women, or do you think people just don't look hard enough?
No, they're not hard to find, and like that's the whole big point I wanted to make. Like for me, hiring women is not tokenism, it's about hiring the women who are the best at what they do, And so if you see a woman on set, like she's beat out probably 50 other people to get that job, so she knows what the hell she's doing. If you see a guy on set, it could be his first day, like you don't know. But and like he's not gonna tell you. But for me, it's like Rachel Morrison was my cinematographer, and like I had known her work from Fruitvale Station, and also like I lived in LA for a while, like the whole like lesbian social world is like small. And then like Tamar Kali, she'd worked on Pariah. She's the woman on stage that's like rocking out.
Right.
And I knew, and she worked on Bessie also, and worked on this. I've worked with her repeatedly. And Mako Kimitsuno, my editor, she edited Pariah. And so I just got women who I knew that were amazing. Like this woman named Angie Wells, who used to do my makeup on press tour for Bessie. She's doing my makeup one day, and I'm like, you should like run a department. And same thing, there's a woman named Pud Kuzak, who's our sound recorder, our sound mixer on set. And it was just kind of like, who's the best person in New Orleans? And Pud's name came up, so it was like, hire Pud. So for me, it's about, hiring excellent people, because, giving people a shot, yeah, I won't dig that hole, but yeah, it's about excellence.
Look, I understand what you're saying, and it's hard to apply it in a world where people then go, is it tokenism, is it not tokenism? Because at the end of the day, what I find happens is, if somebody who is of a group that is not in the position of power messes up, the whole group is messed up.
Yeah.
So if a woman messes up on set, they go, well, that's why you can't have women.
Yeah,
right.
That's why we don't hire women.
Well, Dave was an asshole.
Yeah,
you know
exactly.
what I mean?
Yeah.
That's essentially it.
Like just Dave goes down. Like not
just
all men
Dave.
go down. Yeah,
exactly.
Totally.
Before I let you go, let's talk about the future for Dee Rees. Are you going to be making blockbusters? Are you interested? Because I know some directors just want to make indie films. They want to make beautiful work that is only in a small environment. Are we going to see you making something crazy? Do you have those aspirations?
Yeah, man. I want to do sci-fi. I actually have I did a part of an anthology series. Electric Dreams is coming out on Amazon soon, and so like I've always wanted to like do sci-fi, and so it's like all these like Philip K. Dick adaptations, and then I have this other kind of sci-fi thing, cooking. And then I have 2 other films. Like one is a Joan Didion piece, The Last Thing He Wanted. So it's like a spy thriller. And then this a movie about the failure to ratify the ERA with Carey Mulligan. So I like scale, I like scope, but the thing I'm addicted to with indie film is like the control, you know? So it's kind of like that trade-off where the more money you take, you know, sometimes like the less say you have and like you don't get your cut. And with this film, I got like final cut because it was like an indie film, and I got like festival cut. And so what that means, if it goes and plays well at the festival, they'll leave it alone. You know what I mean? So like I'm always trying to find sneaky ways to get final cut until I cast. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I don't know. I'm gonna make cool stuff.
You're an amazing guest. You make amazing films. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
Mudbound. It's streaming on Netflix. Dee Rees, everybody.